Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Ghana Supreme Court dismisses legal challenges to a hot potato anti-gay bill that aims to roll back rights. It's politically popular at home, but attracted international criticism with plans to bring in the risk of jail time for same-sex couples. Also, as Nigeria allows Shell to sell on and pack up its onshore oil assets, campaigners in oil-producing states in the country call for more accountability from big oil over the destruction caused. A report into Bayelsa state alone describes the harm as having been an environmental genocide. And Kenya takes efforts up a gear as it tries to make changes to ensure that more drivers make it home for Christmas. This time of the year often sees a marked spike in fatal road accidents as people head out to connect up with loved ones across the country. But first, in Ghana, the Supreme Court rejected two bids to overturn a bill that would roll back LGBTQ+ rights. The Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill could lead to jail terms for people in same-sex relations. It was approved by MPs in February, but can only become law if ratified by outgoing President Nana Akufo-Addo or President-elect John Mahama. Now, the proposed changes are popular in Ghana, but have attracted criticism from human rights bodies around the world, and its own finance ministries warned that the bill could have serious economic repercussions. Justice Baidu talks us through.
The petition challenging the bill had been brought to the country's highest court on the grounds that it violated several human rights and ran contrary to the country's constitution. Among other penalties, the proposed bill proposes a 10-year jail term for anyone who is caught showing any sense of romance between people of the same sex. It also proposes a 6-month jail term for anyone who produces or procures any items that seek to promote LGBTQ activity. It also places a ban on activism around LGBTQ issues in Ghana.
The plaintiff's writ does not properly invoke the exclusive jurisdiction of this court. We are of the view that the subject of the litigation, being a bill still undergoing the process of becoming law in accordance with the provisions fully set out in the Constitution, it will be premature for this court to exercise its interpretive and enforcement jurisdiction to intervene. Consequently, we think that the action fails. It is accordingly dismissed.
The petitioners, a journalist and academic, have said they would wait for the full ruling, which comes out at the end of this week, to determine their next line of action.
We did not go to court on the contents, on the provisions of the bill. We were proceeding on Article 108, that this is a private member's bill, and based on that, certain procedures needed to be followed. So we want to see what the judgment is and what the arguments have been made concerning what we raised in the application.
The bill, known formally as the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill, enjoys huge support from Ghana's largely religious population.
Justice Baidu there for us. Now, at least 30 children have been killed in a stampede at a fun fair at a school in Nigeria. The organisers of Wednesday's event, which was held at the Islamic High School in Bassaran, Oyo State, have reportedly been arrested over the tragedy. It's still not clear what caused the fatal crush, but over 5,000 young people had been expected at the gathering, which was for the Women in Need of Guidance and Support Foundation. And a fire broke out in parts of Liberia's Parliament building in Monrovia on Wednesday. The blaze came a day after tense street protests in the capital over the removal of the House Speaker, Jonathan Fonati Kofa, following a months-long political standoff with critics of Kofa, who accused him of corruption. Now, no link to the rallies and the blaze has yet officially been established. Several suspects have, though, reportedly been taken in for custody for questioning about the fire, but police have yet to say what might have caused it. Now, oil giant Shell is set to end nearly a century of onshore oil and gas production in Nigeria. Abuja has greenlit Shell's $2.4 billion asset sale to local buyers, the Renaissance Group. Now, Shell's still investing heavily in offshore exploration in the country, but its onshore wrap-up is part of a trend of energy multinationals scaling back or exiting Nigeria. And that's a worry for campaigners wanting some accountability from big companies pulling out after running profitable operations that have also caused decades of environmental and other damage. For Bayelsa State alone, a recent forensic report reckons that it will take at least £12 billion over 12 years to meaningfully make up for just some of the harm caused by Shell's operations that have been there since 1956. For a closer look at this, I'm joined now by Catherine, who is the director of the Politics and Governance Programme at the ODI think tank that backed that report to which I just referred. Catherine, thanks so much for coming in to talk us a bit through some of the issues that are brought up here. Now, there's a lot of pushback and even disappointment that's been expressed about the oil ministry's decision to allow the sale of Shell's assets. But why is that so problematic? Isn't getting big oil out of the country in some ways a positive thing?
Well, first of all, we are still waiting for official confirmation of what we've received as news about the sale. And we believe that it is highly problematic. One, because the oil companies concerned are selling off to local oil companies who they've lent money to buy from them. And these oil companies are not equipped to deal with some of the huge legacies of environmental destruction and pollution damage in states like Bayelsa. So selling off their assets is a way of absolving themselves from responsibility for that, and so we find it highly problematic. We're also very concerned about the use of the term divestment to describe what they're doing, because as you so rightly pointed out, divestment from onshore doesn't mean divestment from oil and gas production. So they're now going into deep water production, which is much less exposes them less to all the challenges around environmental pollution that they are having to face. So we're very concerned about the secrecy with which this has taken place and the fact that we demand of those oil companies accountability and cleanup. We put a figure on it, £12 billion over 12 years, that it should take to address some of the problems that have been created by their legacy in Bayelsa. And we're concerned that, hiving off their assets to Renaissance, this consortium of Nigerian companies, is not going to address the matter. In the report, we go into some detail about some examples of that having already happened with Shell in ITO, another Nigerian company, who has been managing the assets bought from Shell over the last 10 years. And we've seen the results of that. The results are that when there are oil spills, it takes over 2.5 months to deal with them or even shut down or address the cause of the oil spill. So
but why are you so focused on the oil companies themselves? Because, they have, one hand, they do bring a lot of economic benefit to the country, if not the communities around them. And also they've pointed out that a lot of the spills that you referred to are linked to oil theft. So why are they the ones that you think should take responsibility for the environmental damage?
Certainly, the oil companies have contributed immensely to Nigeria's economy. Over $160 billion has been raised since 2006 from oil and gas production. However, as you rightly point out, where that oil comes from is the problem. So the costs far outweigh the benefits for local communities who who have to deal with the environmental pollution, the health damage, and so on that's associated. I would also say that the charge of sabotage is highly contested. The process for identifying the cause of spill is very problematic because there's a process called the Joint Investigation Visit, where Shell, or the company concerned, with NOSRA, which is the local regulatory body, and local community representatives, paid for by Shell, so the Shell provides, or whatever oil company provides the infrastructure, and will go to the site of the spill and determine amongst themselves what the cause was and then sign it.
You're saying that the oil companies self-report the spills?
Yeah, they do so in conjunction with others, but because they supply the infrastructure required to actually go to the site, it is highly problematic. And so if Shell is able to say, OK, it's sabotage, it means they're not liable for dealing with it. So there's a whole political economy around the sabotage question that we highlight as very problematic in the report. There needs to be independent assessment of the causes of spill.
And what is the scope of your concerns here? Are you against the fossil fuel industry in general in Nigeria? And also, you know, what does this all say about the state of the industry in the continent as a whole?
To say that we are against the fossil fuel industry, in short, is simplistic, I think. We are against the manner in which fossil fuel production has taken place over the last almost 70 years in Nigeria, where basic regulatory considerations are not taken seriously, where international standards are not applied, where strategy is lacking, where pipeline infrastructure is poor, where decommissioned assets are rarely, are still live, even though they're no longer used. And so we have a whole, what we've called environmental genocide problem in Bayelsa as a result of the poor manner in which the fossil fuel industry has been conducting itself. And the oil companies are to blame, but also we highlight that the countries where these oil companies are domiciled, their governments also have some responsibility for holding their companies to account. So that's one. And also, we say that fossil fuel industry, we know that time is running out. You know, Nigeria is still interested in gas, but we believe the experience of the Niger Delta, the environmental pollution or the health impacts and so on, are what's coming up the road for other African countries. So we believe Bayelsa's story is an African story that needs to be told.
Thank you so much for talking us through all that, Catherine. Before we wrap up the bulletin, though, we head to Kenya, which is ramping up for the holiday season. Authorities also are bracing for an increase in accidents. Every year, tens of thousands of people leave their city homes to head out to visit family in the countryside, and that mass accidents is not without its dangers, often feeding substantially into pretty worrying statistics showing that around 13,000 people are killed on Kenya's roads every year. Our team sent us this report.
Thank you for calling Emergency Medical Services.
An accident has just been reported to this Kenyan rescue center.
Where exactly on Mombasa Road?
Right away, the team dispatches an ambulance.
Dispatch, you are clear.
Majority of the calls that we get for the road traffic accidents are for pedestrians who are being hit or maybe the motorbike users.
According to the WHO, 13,000 people die on Kenyan roads each year. Most are caused by human factors such as alcohol or speeding. But many motorists involved in accidents arguably should never have been behind the wheel. Many driving instructors believe that too many road users, especially motorcyclists, have not properly learned about highway hazards.
It's not actually necessarily just knowing how to skills to drive a vehicle, but it's also good to have the theory part. And once someone is not having the know-how, some of them may cause road crashes.
Campaigners are trying to get Kenyans to be more vigilant in using their vehicles. Bright Oiwaya was in a crash in 1997 and is paralyzed from the waist down. Today, she is a vocal road safety advocate.
We know if we deal with speed, we know if we deal with helmet wearing, we know if we deal with child restraints, we know if we deal with seat belts, we know if we deal with drink driving, we know if we deal with the infrastructure, education, awareness, putting all those things together. There is no way we cannot have good results. But we are not looking at all those things holistically.
Bright's insight may already be having an impact. She consulted with the government on a new road safety action plan that was launched in April 2024, and if properly enforced, could make a big difference in driving change for the better for Kenyan travelers.
That's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, though. Do so again. Take care.